She woke up before the sun every day, the city still quiet and asleep. The streets were cool and smelled faintly of damp concrete and bakery bread from the corner shop. She slipped into her worn shoes, pulled on her uniform, and quietly left the small apartment she shared with her family. The mornings were always the hardest. She had long shifts ahead, and every day seemed heavier than the last, but she never complained. Deep down, she carried a secret that no one in her life fully knew. From a very young age, music had been her world. The first time she touched a piano, even a battered, out-of-tune one at her school, she felt something magical. Her fingers seemed to know what to do, moving as if they had a mind of their own. Notes she had never heard in her head flowed effortlessly, and for the first time, she felt truly free. But life had other plans. Money was tight, and dreams of music lessons and grand performances faded as quickly as they came. She found herself working long hours to help at home, leaving her musical aspirations behind. At the restaurant, she moved with quiet precision. She balanced trays with skill, served food with a polite smile, and listened to the endless chatter of customers. Some were kind, tipping generously and exchanging a friendly word. Others were rude, snapping at her for minor mistakes, as if she existed only to serve their whims. But she had learned to keep her calm. She had no choice but to endure, and over time, she became known for her patience and grace under pressure. Even while serving tables, music never left her mind. She tapped rhythms on trays as she moved, hummed quietly between orders, and sometimes found herself imagining the notes she would play on a real piano. Those moments, brief and private, were her sanctuary. She dreamed of a stage, of an audience captivated by her hands dancing over ivory keys. But each day, reality reminded her that dreams were a luxury she could not afford. The restaurant was busy that morning, a typical rush. She navigated between tables, balancing plates, refilling drinks, and smiling through the fatigue that tugged at her shoulders. The customers were oblivious to the young woman's inner world, focused only on their meals and complaints. Yet, she moved with a rhythm of her own, each step and gesture flowing naturally, almost like a silent dance. She imagined a piano under her fingers as she set down a plate, each tap and clink forming an invisible melody. During her short breaks, she would sit quietly in the back room, listening to snippets of music from her phone, replaying the old pieces she remembered from childhood. Chopin, Bach, and Debussy. They were names she barely knew in their full context, but she felt their music in her bones. She practiced finger movements in her lap, perfecting scales and imagining melodies in the small, dimly lit space. These moments were stolen from the chaos of her day, but they kept her spirit alive. Her coworkers often noticed her quiet moments, but few knew the reason. They assumed she was simply tired, a little lost in thought. Occasionally, someone would joke about her staring into the air, and she would smile politely, not explaining the symphony playing in her mind. Music was a secret she cherished, a world she could retreat to when the pressures of life threatened to overwhelm her. Some days were harder than others. The restaurant could be brutal, especially when busy, and the weight of responsibility pressed down on her. Orders flew in faster than she could keep track, customers grew impatient, and mistakes were inevitable. She carried every complaint silently, never letting frustration show. Yet, even in those moments, her love for music reminded her that she was more than her current circumstances. It whispered promises of something greater, of a stage where her talent could shine. One afternoon, as she carried a tray through the crowded dining room, a small smile appeared on her face without her realizing it. A musician had come into the restaurant to meet someone, and the soft notes of a piano drifted from the corner of the room. She froze for a moment, listening, captivated. Her heart beat faster as she imagined sitting at that piano herself, letting her fingers glide over the keys. The world around her disappeared for a brief, beautiful moment. When the song ended, she shook herself and returned to her work, but the feeling lingered, a reminder of what she had longed for all her life. The evening rush began, and the restaurant grew louder. The clatter of dishes, the chatter of customers, and the hum of the air conditioning created a constant backdrop. She moved efficiently, her mind divided between her duties and the melodies that refused to leave her. Each step, each motion was tinged with the rhythm she carried inside. Even when she was exhausted, she never stopped dreaming, never stopped imagining herself at a piano that seemed almost mythical in her imagination. As the night wore on, she finished her shift and stepped out into the cool night air. The streets were quieter now, and she walked home slowly, reflecting on the day. Her body ached, and her feet were sore, but her mind was alive with music. She imagined practicing late into the night, teaching herself the notes she had only ever heard in her head. It was a solitary existence, but it was hers, and it fueled her determination. She thought of the future, uncertain and daunting, yet full of possibility. Maybe one day someone would hear her play. Maybe one day, she would step onto a stage and show the world the talent she had kept hidden for so long. Until then, she would continue to serve tables, to work hard, and to carry the music within her. It was her secret, her strength, and her hope. In the small hours before dawn, she finally returned home. She sat at the edge of her bed, fingers moving in the air as if playing an invisible piano. She whispered the notes to herself, imagining the sound, the feel, the joy of creating music. And as she drifted into a light sleep, she knew that no matter how hard life became, no matter how many long shifts awaited her, she would never let go of her dream. The music inside her would always guide her, a quiet promise that one day, her talent would no longer be hidden in the shadows. She would rise, not just to survive, but to shine. Her journey had only begun, and though the world saw her as just another waitress, she carried the soul of a pianist ready to emerge. Each day of serving tables was a step toward the stage. Each plate carried with care a preparation for her future. And somewhere deep inside, she held on to the hope that one day, the quiet music of her life would become a powerful symphony that would amaze everyone around her. It was a busy afternoon at the restaurant, with sunlight streaming through the large windows and reflecting off the polished wooden tables. The clatter of dishes, the hum of conversations, and the occasional shout from the kitchen created a familiar chaos. She moved through it all with practiced ease, carrying trays and refilling drinks, but her mind was elsewhere. There was a quiet hope lingering inside her, a dream that refused to fade even under the weight of her daily life. That day, the restaurant had a special event. A small piano was set up in the corner, and a few musicians were there to perform for a private party. As she served the tables, she noticed the soft notes drifting across the room. They were gentle, delicate, and full of emotion, unlike anything she had heard in the restaurant before. She stopped for a moment just to listen. The music stirred something deep within her, a mixture of longing and excitement she couldn't quite explain. A man sitting near the piano noticed her pause. He had a kind face, and there was a gentle warmth in his eyes as he watched her. When the performance ended, he approached her. He didn't speak in a commanding or harsh tone. Instead, his voice was calm and encouraging. He asked if she played piano. She hesitated, unsure of how to respond. She had never had formal lessons, never had a chance to show her talent publicly, and the thought of performing in front of anyone made her stomach twist. She muttered that she only played a little, and he smiled knowingly. He didn't push, only offered a suggestion. There was a piano nearby, he said, and if she wanted, she could try it. The words were simple, but they carried a weight she hadn't felt in years. Her heart raced. The idea of playing a real piano in front of someone, even briefly, was both terrifying and thrilling. She nodded slowly, unsure if she was ready, yet unable to resist the pull. The pianist led her to the small instrument in the corner. It wasn't grand, but it was well maintained, with smooth keys that begged to be touched. She sat down, her fingers hovering above the keys. For a moment, nothing happened. The restaurant noise seemed distant, fading into the background. She closed her eyes and let her hands fall naturally onto the keys. Notes filled the space, simple at first, hesitant and cautious, but they were hers. Each one carried a piece of her soul, a reflection of her longing, her dreams, and her silent years of practice in stolen moments. The man listened quietly, nodding slightly as her confidence grew. She played slowly at first, then faster as the music poured out of her. It wasn't perfect, but it was alive, real, and beautiful. A few customers turned to watch, drawn by the unexpected sound. They whispered to each other, surprised by the talent coming from someone who had been unnoticed in the restaurant for so long. When she finished, she felt a mixture of relief and exhilaration. She looked at the man, who smiled warmly and encouraged her. He suggested that with practice, guidance, and determination, she could become much better. The words ignited something inside her, a spark of hope that had been buried under long days and endless responsibilities. She realized that this was a chance, a door opening to a world she had only dreamed of. Over the next few days, the thought of the piano stayed with her. She couldn't focus entirely on her work, her mind constantly replaying the melodies she had played and imagining new ones. She thought about the possibility of learning more, of improving, of stepping into a world where her music could be heard and appreciated. It seemed distant, almost impossible, but the idea was intoxicating. She began to practice in secret, using every spare moment. In the empty dining room after closing, she would place her hands on the piano, exploring scales, trying out melodies she remembered from childhood. Her fingers stumbled at first, uncertain and clumsy, but slowly they began to move with more confidence. Each note she played was a victory, each melody a step closer to the dream she had carried silently for years. Her family noticed a change. She seemed lighter, more focused, and a little happier despite the long hours at the restaurant. They didn't know the full reason, but they encouraged her in small ways, reminding her to rest, to take care of herself. Their support, even if they didn't fully understand her passion, gave her strength. She also became more observant during her shifts. Every time a musician came into the restaurant, every time she passed a music store or heard someone playing on the street, she paid closer attention. She absorbed melodies, rhythms, and harmonies, mentally practicing even when her hands couldn't reach the keys. Music was no longer just a dream. It was a constant companion, guiding her through the monotony and stress of daily life. One evening, a small competition was announced at a local community center. It wasn't a professional stage, but it was a chance to play in front of people and be heard. The thought terrified her. What if she failed? What if her lack of formal training showed? But the man who had first encouraged her reminded her of her talent and urged her to seize the opportunity. She realized that waiting for the perfect moment would only delay her dream. If she wanted to step into music, she had to start somewhere. She decided to enter the competition. She practiced every spare moment, refining pieces, experimenting with new ones, and imagining herself on the stage. She learned to manage her nerves, to focus on the music rather than the audience, and to trust her fingers to find the right notes. It was hard work, exhausting both mentally and physically, but the excitement of possibility carried her through. On the day of the competition, she arrived early. The community center was small, with a simple stage and chairs arranged for a modest audience. She felt a surge of anxiety, watching other participants tuning their instruments and preparing. They seemed confident, polished, and experienced. She almost turned away, but then she remembered the joy she had felt playing the piano in the restaurant, the spark of hope the man had ignited, and she took a deep breath. She was ready. When her turn came, she walked to the piano, her heart racing. The lights seemed brighter, the room quieter, and the audience suddenly larger than life. She sat down, placed her fingers on the keys, and closed her eyes. The first note rang out, tentative but clear. She focused on the music, letting it flow through her, ignoring the audience, ignoring the nerves. Each note gained confidence. Each melody became more fluid, and soon she was lost in the music. It was as if the piano had always been a part of her, and now she could finally let the world hear it. The audience listened in silence, captivated by the unexpected talent before them. Her hands moved with grace and precision, her emotions pouring into every note. When she finished, there was a moment of stillness, followed by enthusiastic applause. The sound was overwhelming, but it filled her with a sense of accomplishment and pride she had never known. She had taken the first step, and it had been worth every moment of struggle. After the competition, she felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. People came up to her, complimenting her performance, asking how long she had been playing. She smiled, sometimes sharing a little of her story, sometimes simply thanking them. She realized that this was only the beginning. There were more opportunities, more stages, more music waiting for her. But for the first time, she understood that her hidden talent could truly be seen and appreciated. Walking home that night, she felt different. The streets were quiet, and the city lights reflected softly on the pavement. She thought about the restaurant, her long hours, the struggles she faced every day, and realized that none of it had been wasted. Each moment of hard work, each challenge she had faced, had prepared her for this. Music had always been her companion, and now it was her path forward. She promised herself that she would continue, that she would not let fear or doubt stop her. The piano was no longer just a dream. It was her future. And though she still had a long way to go, she carried with her a newfound confidence and the knowledge that her talent could amaze people. From that day on, every note she played was a step closer to the stage she had always imagined, and she was ready to take it one melody at a time. After the competition, she felt a new kind of energy inside her. It was different from the usual fatigue she carried after long shifts at the restaurant. This energy was quiet but strong, a mixture of excitement and determination. She knew she wanted more than just a small audience. She wanted to see how far she could go with the piano, how far her talent could take her if she worked hard enough. But she also knew it would not be easy. She had a job to continue, responsibilities at home, and very little money to support formal lessons. Still, she found ways to practice. Every evening after the restaurant closed, she would rush to a small, rented piano room near her apartment. The space was simple and quiet, and it felt like a secret sanctuary. She spent hours practicing scales, improvising melodies, and experimenting with pieces she had only ever played in her imagination. She often made mistakes, her fingers stumbling over notes, but she refused to give up. Each error was a lesson, each struggle a step closer to improvement. At work, she noticed herself moving differently. She carried trays with more rhythm, hummed quietly as she worked, and even began tapping her fingers to imaginary melodies while serving tables. Customers noticed a change in her demeanor, though they couldn't quite put a finger on it. She walked with more confidence, smiled more easily, and seemed lighter somehow. Music was no longer just a dream. It was becoming a visible part of her life. One day, she was approached by a local music teacher who had heard about her performance at the community competition. The teacher offered to give her guidance, promising lessons at a reduced cost because he saw her potential. She was hesitant at first. Money was tight and she couldn't afford much. But he insisted, saying that talent like hers should not go unnoticed. The opportunity felt like a second spark, reigniting the hope that had been building inside her. She began formal lessons, learning to read music properly and understand the structure behind the melodies she had always played intuitively. The teacher was patient but demanding, pushing her to improve while encouraging her creativity. Some days were frustrating, as new concepts and techniques felt foreign and difficult. But she persisted, motivated by the thought of performing in front of a larger audience one day, of stepping onto a real stage where her music could touch people. Her practice routines became more structured. Mornings were still spent at the restaurant, but evenings were devoted entirely to the piano. She practiced for hours, sometimes until her fingers ached, until she could play passages perfectly, until the music flowed naturally from her soul. She began memorizing complex pieces, experimenting with dynamics, and learning to convey emotion through her playing. Music became her constant companion, a source of comfort and strength amid the challenges of daily life. She also began observing other musicians more closely. Street performers, fellow students, and recordings of famous pianists became sources of inspiration. She watched their hand movements, the way they expressed emotion, and the techniques they used to make the music alive. Slowly, she began incorporating elements of their style into her own playing, blending it with the natural feel she had developed over the years. Work at the restaurant remained demanding, but she started to see it in a new light. The patience and discipline required to serve tables, to handle difficult customers, and to maintain focus during long shifts had prepared her in unexpected ways. It had taught her endurance, resilience, and the ability to perform under pressure, skills that were now helping her perform better at the piano. Each day was a delicate balance, but she managed, driven by the vision of her dream. Her family began to notice her growing dedication. They were proud but concerned about her exhaustion. She reassured them, explaining that this was an opportunity she couldn't ignore. They supported her quietly, understanding that music had always been a part of her life, even if they had never fully realized its depth. Their encouragement, small as it was, became another pillar of strength for her. Opportunities started to appear. A small local recital invited her to perform, and she accepted eagerly. The audience was modest, mostly friends, family, and community members, but it was a real stage, a real chance to show her progress. She practiced relentlessly, ensuring every piece was polished, every note intentional. The night of the recital, she felt nervous but ready. Sitting at the piano, she took a deep breath and began to play. The music flowed effortlessly, her fingers moving with precision and emotion. The audience was silent at first, then erupted in applause when she finished. The thrill of being recognized for her talent was intoxicating. Encouraged by this success, she sought larger challenges. She entered regional competitions, where the stakes were higher, the audiences bigger, and the pressure intense. Each performance tested her skill, her nerves, and her ability to connect with listeners. She faced setbacks too. Moments of failure, pieces that didn't go as planned, judges who offered criticism instead of praise. But each experience strengthened her resolve, teaching her resilience, patience, and the importance of continuous improvement. Her reputation slowly grew. People who had seen her play before shared her story, spreading the word about the waitress who was becoming a pianist to watch. Invitations to perform at local events, small concerts, and community gatherings started to arrive. With each new opportunity, she gained confidence, learning to balance technical skill with expressive emotion, making her performances not just accurate, but moving. She also began mentoring herself in ways beyond lessons. She kept a journal of her progress, noting areas of improvement and pieces she wanted to master. She recorded her practice sessions to analyze mistakes, experimenting with interpretation and style. Every day was a lesson, not just in music, but in discipline, self-reflection, and the relentless pursuit of growth. Despite the long hours and demanding practice, she never lost sight of why she played. Music was her voice, her escape, and her joy. It was the thing that reminded her of her own strength, the reason she endured hardships, and the promise of a brighter future. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a bridge between her ordinary life and the extraordinary dreams she carried within her. She continued to work at the restaurant, but now each shift felt different. The long hours and endless demands were still present, but they were softened by the thought of music waiting for her afterward. Every tray she carried, every plate she set down, every customer she served was a step toward the discipline and patience she needed to succeed in her musical journey. Life was still hard, but she felt more capable of facing it. Her persistence caught the attention of more experienced musicians. Some offered guidance, some invited her to collaborate, and some simply encouraged her to continue pursuing her passion. Each interaction was a lesson, each connection a new thread in the tapestry of her musical growth. She realized that talent alone was not enough. Dedication, humility, and willingness to learn were equally important. One day, her teacher approached her with an idea. There was a prestigious regional competition coming up, one that could open doors to professional opportunities if she performed well. The thought was daunting. The audience would be large, judges experienced, and the level of talent formidable. But she had come this far, and she knew that turning away now would mean giving up on everything she had worked for. With determination, she accepted the challenge. In the weeks leading up to the competition, her life became even more focused. She divided her time between work, practice, and preparation. She studied her pieces meticulously, ensuring each note, each pause, each dynamic was perfect. She practiced under pressure, imagining the audience, the judges, and the stage lights, preparing herself for every possible challenge. It was exhausting, but she thrived under the intensity, knowing that every moment of effort brought her closer to her dream. Finally, the day of the competition arrived. She entered the hall, her heart racing, her palms sweaty. The room was filled with talented musicians, each confident in their abilities. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of how far she had come, of the countless hours of practice, of the belief she had nurtured within herself. Sitting at the piano, she let the music flow naturally, trusting her fingers, her memory, and her emotions. The audience listened in awe as she played. Her performance was a blend of precision and passion, technique and feeling. Each note resonated with the years of struggle, the moments of doubt, and the dreams she had refused to abandon. When she finished, the room erupted in applause, a wave of recognition and admiration that left her speechless. She had proven to herself, and to everyone watching, that talent combined with dedication could create something extraordinary. As she walked off the stage, she felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She knew that this was just the beginning, that there would be more challenges ahead, more performances, more opportunities to grow. But she also knew that she had crossed a threshold, that she had moved from a life of quiet dreams to one where her music could be heard, appreciated, and celebrated. The piano had become her voice, her path, and her future, and she was ready to embrace every step of the journey. The day had finally come. She stepped into the hall where the regional competition was being held, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nerves. The room was enormous compared to the small community center she had performed in before. Bright lights illuminated the stage, and rows of chairs were filled with spectators. Judges sat at the front, their expressions serious and attentive. Everywhere she looked, she saw confident faces of young musicians who had clearly practiced for years, their instruments polished and perfect. She felt a flutter of doubt, a whisper telling her she didn't belong, but she quickly pushed it away. She had come too far to let fear control her. Backstage, she waited with the other participants. The air was thick with anticipation, the quiet murmur of nervous voices surrounding her. Some exchanged smiles, others reviewed their sheet music one last time. She sat quietly, hands folded, focusing on her breathing. She thought about her journey. The long hours at the restaurant, the secret practice sessions, the small competitions, and the moments when she had almost given up. Each memory strengthened her resolve. She was not just a waitress. She was a musician, and this was her chance to prove it. When her name was called, she walked onto the stage. The lights were brighter than she had imagined, and the audience seemed enormous. She took a deep breath and approached the grand piano, feeling its smooth surface under her fingertips. For a moment, she hesitated, remembering the nervous moments she had faced before. But then she reminded herself that the music had always been inside her. It was not about the audience or the judges. It was about expressing what she had carried for so long. As her fingers touched the keys, the first notes filled the room. They were delicate, tentative, yet full of emotion. She closed her eyes, letting the music guide her. Her hands moved with a confidence that surprised even her, flowing naturally, shaping melodies that resonated with her soul. Each chord carried a piece of her story. The long shifts, the exhaustion, the stolen moments of practice, the silent hope she had nurtured for years. The audience was silent, captivated by the unexpected depth of her performance. She noticed a few faces lean forward, eyes widening in surprise as her fingers danced across the keys. The judges scribbled notes, nodding slightly, clearly impressed. She felt a mixture of relief and exhilaration. Every hour of practice, every sacrifice, every struggle had led to this moment. She played with everything she had, pouring her heart into every note, letting her emotions flow freely. Midway through her performance, she felt the music take over completely. Her fingers moved almost instinctively, remembering patterns she had drilled countless times. She experimented subtly with dynamics, adding softer touches here, stronger emphasis there, creating layers of sound that made the music come alive. The room seemed to fade away. She was no longer standing on a stage in front of strangers. She was in her own world, where only the piano and the music existed. When the final note rang out, there was a brief moment of silence. She opened her eyes slowly, feeling her heart still racing. Then the applause began. It started small, but quickly grew, filling the hall with sound. The judges clapped, audience members stood, and some even wiped tears from their eyes. She felt a rush of emotions: relief, pride, joy, and gratitude all at once. She had done it. She had stepped onto a big stage and shared her music with the world. Backstage, people congratulated her. Fellow participants smiled and shook her hand, some expressing admiration for her performance. She thanked them quietly, still trying to process the overwhelming experience. The teacher who had guided her through lessons was there, smiling with pride. He had believed in her from the beginning, and seeing her succeed was a reward for both of them. After the competition, she reflected on what had happened. She realized that the journey had been as important as the moment on stage. Every long shift at the restaurant, every late-night practice session, every moment of doubt and perseverance had prepared her for this. She understood now that talent alone was not enough. It was determination, resilience, and a willingness to work hard that made the difference. The applause and recognition were thrilling, but they were not the most important part. The music itself, the act of sharing her passion, was what truly mattered. The competition also opened new doors. Organizers and attendees approached her, inviting her to perform at other events, concerts, and recitals. Some offered opportunities to collaborate with other musicians, while others suggested scholarships or advanced training programs. The possibilities seemed endless, and for the first time, she felt that her dream of a musical career could become a reality. It was overwhelming, but she embraced the excitement with open arms. Despite the success, she remained grounded. She continued to work at the restaurant, balancing her job with the new opportunities that came her way. Each day was a juggling act, but she had learned discipline and time management through her journey. She treated every performance, every practice session, and every opportunity seriously, understanding that consistency and dedication were key to long-term success. Her family noticed the changes in her. She was more confident, happier, and driven. They were proud of her accomplishments and supported her in any way they could. The long hours at the restaurant were still part of her life, but they were now interwoven with the excitement and fulfillment that music brought. She had found a way to merge her responsibilities with her passion, creating a life that was both challenging and rewarding. She also became more aware of the impact her story could have on others. Many people were inspired by her journey from a restaurant worker to a pianist performing on stage. She began sharing her experiences, encouraging others to pursue their passions despite obstacles. She understood the power of determination and the importance of believing in oneself. Her music was not only a personal achievement but also a source of inspiration for those around her. In the weeks following the competition, she practiced with renewed focus. She explored more complex pieces, experimented with different styles, and challenged herself to grow as a musician. She attended workshops, listened to recordings of great pianists, and sought advice from experienced performers. Every step was a learning experience, and she embraced it fully. She understood that growth required effort, patience, and the courage to face challenges. Her life began to transform in subtle ways. She walked with more confidence, spoke with more assurance, and approached challenges with a new perspective. Music had given her more than skill. It had given her purpose, resilience, and a sense of identity. She was no longer just a waitress. She was a musician, a performer, and someone who had taken control of her own destiny. The experience of performing on a big stage also taught her about emotions and expression. She learned that music was not just about playing notes correctly but about conveying feelings, telling a story, and connecting with the audience. Each piece she played became a personal expression, a reflection of her experiences, struggles, and dreams. She discovered the joy of sharing her emotions through sound, and the audience's response became a dialogue that inspired her further. Through all of this, she never forgot her beginnings. The long hours at the restaurant, the secret practice sessions, and the quiet dreams she nurtured in solitude remained a part of her. They reminded her of where she came from and how far she had come. They fueled her determination to continue working hard, to keep growing, and to never take her talent or opportunities for granted. Her journey was still ongoing, with many challenges ahead. She faced each day with a renewed sense of purpose, balancing work, practice, and opportunities with care and dedication. She knew that success required not only talent but also perseverance, discipline, and passion. Every performance was a step forward. Every note played a testament to her journey from humble beginnings to the stage that now recognized her talent. She had discovered a new world, one filled with possibilities and experiences she had never imagined. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was her voice, her path, and her way of connecting with others. The stage, once a distant dream, was now a place where she could express herself fully and inspire those who listened. And as she continued to play, to learn, and to grow, she knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would continue to unfold in ways she could not yet imagine. The day of the next performance had arrived, and the air was thick with anticipation. She had been preparing for weeks, her practice sessions more focused, more intense than ever. Each piece was polished, each note carefully memorized. Yet she knew that the real challenge would be conveying emotion, capturing the audience, and holding their attention from the first note to the last. She could feel her heart racing as she walked toward the hall, the bright lights and the sound of people gathering making every step heavier with nervous energy. Backstage, the atmosphere was tense. Musicians adjusted their instruments, whispered encouragements, and silently went over their pieces. She found a quiet corner, closing her eyes to steady her thoughts. The applause and chatter from the audience seemed distant, replaced by the rhythm of her own breathing. She thought about every long night of practice, every day spent balancing work and music, every moment she had doubted herself. All of it led to this. She was ready. When her name was announced, she walked onto the stage. The lights blinded her for a moment, and she felt the weight of all eyes upon her. The grand piano sat at the center, polished and imposing. She took a deep breath, sat down, and placed her fingers on the keys. The hall was silent, the audience waiting expectantly. She closed her eyes, letting the memory of her countless hours of practice guide her hands. The first notes floated through the room, soft and delicate, drawing the audience in. As the music continued, her confidence grew. The piano became an extension of herself, each note carrying emotion, each melody telling a story. She played with intensity and subtlety, mixing technical skill with expressive phrasing. Her hands moved fluidly, her fingers remembering patterns that had become second nature through years of practice and quiet determination. The audience was mesmerized, captivated by the depth of feeling she brought to the performance. She noticed the reactions around her. A judge leaning forward, eyes fixed on her fingers. Audience members holding their breath, completely absorbed. A few people even wiping tears from their eyes. Her heart swelled, not from pride, but from the connection she felt. This was why she had worked so hard, why she had never given up, why music had remained her constant companion through every struggle. She was sharing herself, not just notes, and the audience felt it. The middle of her performance was the most challenging part. The piece required both technical mastery and emotional expression. Her fingers had to move quickly, accurately, and with feeling. She could feel the tension in the room, the collective anticipation of every listener. For a moment, she almost lost her concentration, a fleeting thought of doubt sneaking in. But she remembered every moment she had spent practicing, every note she had learned, every sacrifice she had made. She pushed the doubt aside and let the music flow naturally. As she played, she began to improvise slightly, adding her own touches, emphasizing certain notes, allowing the melody to breathe. The audience responded instinctively, leaning in, following every movement, every change in tempo. The hall was alive with the sound of her music, filling the space and leaving everyone in awe. For the first time, she truly felt what it meant to perform, to communicate, to create something that moved people without words. When the final chord rang out, there was a pause. The audience sat in stunned silence for a heartbeat before erupting into applause. It was loud, enthusiastic, and overwhelming. Standing ovations followed, with people shouting their appreciation, clapping, and cheering. She sat for a moment, absorbing the energy, feeling tears prick her eyes. The performance was over, but the impact lingered. She had not just played the piano, she had spoken through it. Judges came forward, praising her skill, expression, and stage presence. They commented on her natural ability, the unique touch she brought to the pieces, and the emotional depth of her performance. Some asked about her training, clearly surprised by the level she had reached without formal instruction from a young age. She explained briefly, speaking of her journey from humble beginnings, of balancing work and practice, and of never giving up. The audience listened, inspired by her story as much as by her music. People from the crowd approached her afterward, sharing their admiration and amazement. Some were fellow musicians, offering encouragement and advice. Others were young students, eyes wide with wonder, inspired to pursue their own passions. Many adults came up simply to tell her how touched they were, how her music had reached them in ways words could not. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, realizing that her struggles had led to a moment that truly mattered. Backstage, her teacher embraced her, pride shining in his eyes. He reminded her of how far she had come, from a young woman quietly practicing in secret to someone who could captivate an audience with her talent and emotion. His words reinforced what she already felt, that her journey was just beginning, and that the possibilities ahead were vast and exciting. That night, as she walked home, she replayed the performance in her mind. She remembered the notes, the feeling of the keys under her fingers, the audience's reaction. But more importantly, she remembered the emotions she had expressed, the story she had told without words. Music had given her a voice, a way to communicate her experiences, dreams, and resilience. She understood now that this was what she had always been striving for. Not just recognition, but the ability to touch people's hearts through her gift. In the following days, invitations poured in. Community centers, local events, and small concert venues wanted her to perform. Musicians reached out, interested in collaborations or mentoring. Opportunities for further study and scholarships were mentioned, suggesting paths she had never imagined. Each offer was exciting but also demanding. She realized that with recognition came responsibility. To continue improving, to honor her talent, and to use her gift meaningfully. Her life began to feel more vibrant, more purposeful. Work at the restaurant was still part of her routine, but it no longer defined her. Music had become her identity, her anchor, and her path forward. Every spare moment was filled with practice, preparation, or exploration of new pieces. She experimented with styles, composed small original works, and continued refining her technique. The joy of music, which had once been a quiet escape, was now central to her life. She also became more reflective, understanding the journey that had brought her here. The long hours, the exhaustion, the small victories, and the hidden practices were all part of a tapestry that made her performance meaningful. She appreciated the struggles as much as the successes, knowing that without them, she would not have grown, not have developed the depth of expression that moved audiences. Every challenge she faced became a source of strength, a reminder of her resilience. The performance that had shocked everyone also taught her humility. Talent alone was not enough. Dedication, preparation, and the ability to connect with others were equally important. She listened to feedback, observed other performers, and sought ways to improve. Her journey was ongoing, a continuous process of learning and growth, and she embraced it with the same determination that had carried her from the restaurant to the stage. Over time, her story began to inspire others. Young musicians who struggled with self-doubt looked up to her as an example. People in her community admired her perseverance and commitment to her dreams. She shared her experiences, emphasizing that obstacles were not meant to stop anyone, but to test their resolve. Her journey became a testament to the power of passion, hard work, and belief in oneself. Despite the acclaim, she remained grounded. She remembered her beginnings, the long shifts at the restaurant, the secret practice sessions, and the quiet dreams she had nurtured. Those experiences reminded her of the importance of humility, patience, and gratitude. She continued to work hard, practice diligently, and approach every performance with sincerity and dedication. Music had given her recognition, but it had also given her perspective, purpose, and a deeper understanding of life. As the weeks passed, she performed at more events, each one building her confidence and experience. She began to develop a unique style, blending technical skill with expressive storytelling. Audiences responded enthusiastically, captivated by her ability to convey emotion through music. She realized that this was her true calling: to perform, to inspire, and to communicate through the universal language of music. Her journey was far from over. She knew that challenges would continue, that improvement required constant effort, and that every performance was an opportunity to learn and grow. But she faced the future with confidence, carrying the lessons of the past and the excitement of possibility. From humble beginnings as a waitress, she had transformed into a musician capable of moving audiences, inspiring others, and embracing her full potential. And as she sat at the piano, ready to play for the next audience, she knew that every note she touched carried the story of her remarkable journey. After the performance that left everyone amazed, her life began to change in ways she had only dreamed about. Invitations to perform at local concerts, community events, and even small festivals started arriving. Each opportunity was both exciting and intimidating. She had never performed in so many places, never faced so many people waiting to hear her play. Yet, she embraced every chance, seeing them as steps on the path she had worked so hard to follow. She continued to practice diligently. Her days were still filled with long hours, but now they included rehearsals, travel to events, and performances. The piano had become central to her life, guiding her schedule, her focus, and even her interactions with others. She experimented with new pieces, combining technical challenges with expressive melodies that could touch listeners deeply. Each performance taught her something new, whether it was about stage presence, emotional connection, or even how to manage nerves. Work at the restaurant remained part of her life, but it no longer defined her identity. She could balance her shifts with her growing musical career, using the discipline she had learned there to navigate the pressures of performing and traveling. Every tray she carried, every customer she served, seemed to reinforce her resilience and patience, qualities that now enhanced her artistry. She realized that her past struggles had prepared her in ways she had never imagined. Her family watched her transformation with pride and amazement. They had supported her quietly, never fully understanding the depth of her dedication. But now they saw the fruits of her perseverance. They celebrated every achievement with her, shared in the joy of her recognition, and encouraged her to pursue bigger dreams. Their belief in her became a source of strength, reminding her of the foundation that had supported her from the beginning. With growing recognition, she began to meet other musicians and artists. Some were experienced professionals, while others were peers discovering their talents. She learned from each encounter, absorbing tips, techniques, and insights. Collaboration became a new part of her journey, allowing her to explore different musical styles, experiment with improvisation, and develop her unique voice. These interactions broadened her perspective and deepened her understanding of music as both craft and expression. Despite the excitement of opportunities and recognition, she remained grounded. She never forgot the long hours, the early mornings, and the quiet determination that had brought her this far. She continued to practice privately, refining her technique, expanding her repertoire, and working on musical expression. She understood that true mastery required ongoing effort and humility. Success was not just about applause or recognition, but about the dedication to continual improvement. Her performances began to reach wider audiences. Local media featured her story, highlighting her journey from a waitress to a pianist who captivated crowds with her talent and emotion. People were inspired not only by her skill but by her determination and resilience. Young musicians wrote to her, expressing hope and encouragement, and she responded, sharing advice and the importance of believing in oneself. She realized that her influence extended beyond music. It was also about inspiring others to pursue their dreams despite obstacles. Each new performance brought challenges. Some venues were larger, with more experienced audiences and critical judges. Some pieces were complex, requiring intense focus and precision. She faced setbacks too. Moments when a note was missed, when nerves affected her timing, or when the audience didn't respond as expected. But she learned from every experience, using mistakes as lessons and turning them into motivation to improve. Every challenge became an opportunity to grow stronger. Over time, she began composing her own music. Inspired by her journey, her emotions, and the people she had met, she created melodies that reflected her experiences and perspective. Composing was different from performing. It required introspection, imagination, and patience. She embraced the process, experimenting with harmonies, rhythms, and dynamics, and gradually developed a distinctive style. Sharing these compositions with audiences added another layer to her artistry, allowing her to communicate her story in a personal and profound way. The recognition she received also brought invitations to teach and mentor young musicians. She found joy in helping others develop their skills, sharing the lessons she had learned about dedication, perseverance, and self-belief. Mentoring allowed her to give back to the community that had supported her and inspired her journey. It also reinforced her own growth, reminding her of how far she had come and the importance of nurturing talent and confidence in others. With every performance and every new connection, she gained confidence. She could see her progress not only in technical skill but in emotional expression, stage presence, and personal growth. She learned to manage nerves, to engage audiences, and to convey her own story through music. The piano became not just an instrument but an extension of herself, a way to share her emotions, experiences, and aspirations with the world. She also began to appreciate the broader impact of her journey. Her story resonated with people beyond music, showing that hard work, patience, and dedication could lead to transformation. She spoke at community events, shared her experiences with schools, and inspired others to pursue their passions despite obstacles. She realized that her journey had meaning beyond personal achievement. It could motivate and encourage countless others to believe in themselves and their dreams. Her personal growth was as significant as her musical development. She became more confident, resilient, and self-aware. She handled challenges with patience, approached opportunities with careful consideration, and balanced her life with wisdom and focus. She learned the importance of rest, reflection, and maintaining connections with family, friends, and mentors. These lessons reinforced her ability to navigate the demands of a growing career and the responsibilities of everyday life. Years passed, and she continued to rise in her musical journey. She performed in larger venues, participated in prestigious competitions, and received invitations to collaborate with renowned musicians. Each new stage, each new audience, challenged her to grow, to refine her craft, and to express herself more deeply. Yet, she remained humble, remembering the early days when the piano had been a secret dream, practiced in quiet moments after long shifts at the restaurant. The impact of her music became evident in the audience's reactions. People were moved, inspired, and captivated by her performances. She realized that her talent was not just a personal achievement but a gift to share, capable of touching hearts, encouraging others, and spreading joy. Every note she played carried a piece of her journey, her perseverance, and her belief in the power of following one's dreams. Her story also reached young people who faced similar challenges. Many were struggling with doubts, limited opportunities, or societal expectations that made pursuing dreams seem impossible. They looked to her as proof that persistence and dedication could create a path to success. She shared her story openly, emphasizing that obstacles were not barriers but challenges to overcome with effort and belief. She encouraged others to practice, learn, and keep moving forward, regardless of setbacks. Through all these experiences, she never lost sight of the joy that music brought her. Beyond recognition, accolades, and opportunities, music remained her passion, her escape, and her voice. She played for herself as much as for others, cherishing the moments when she could express emotions freely, improvise melodies, and explore new creative possibilities. The piano was a constant source of inspiration, motivation, and fulfillment. Looking back, she understood the journey she had taken. From serving tables to performing on stages, she had only dreamed of every challenge, every sacrifice, and every moment of perseverance had led to this life. She realized that success was not instantaneous but built gradually through effort, patience, and self-belief. Her story was a testament to the power of determination, the importance of nurturing hidden talents, and the rewards of never giving up. As she continued to perform, teach, and inspire, she remained connected to her beginnings. The restaurant, the long hours, and the quiet practices were all integral to who she had become. They reminded her of the resilience and discipline that had allowed her to reach this point. She carried those lessons with her, knowing they were as valuable as her talent itself. Her journey was far from over. Each performance, each composition, and each opportunity to mentor or inspire others was a new chapter. She embraced the future with enthusiasm and courage, confident in her abilities and driven by her passion. From a young woman quietly practicing in secret to a pianist admired and respected by audiences and peers alike, she had transformed her life through dedication, talent, and the unwavering belief in her own potential. In the quiet moments after a performance, when the applause had faded and the audience had left, she would sit at the piano alone. Her fingers would trace the keys, sometimes playing familiar pieces, sometimes improvising. She reflected on her journey, feeling gratitude for every challenge, every small victory, and every person who had encouraged her along the way. Music had given her purpose, voice, and a path to greatness, and she embraced it fully, knowing that her story could inspire others to reach for their own dreams, no matter how impossible they seemed.